Welcome back to Bright Ideas from Acuity Brands on IndustrialSage. Today we are going to examine life safety codes for buildings and how to easily choose products that make compliance simple. I'm joined by Jon Carter, Product Manager for Life Safety at Acuity Brands. Jon, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Catherine, thank you very much.
Let's start. Why do we have life safety codes?
Well, life safety codes are there ultimately to keep people safe in a building in case of an emergency. Now that could mean leaving the lights on to exit the building safely in the event of a fire, or illuminating the space if people are staying inside during a power outage or natural disaster. Now these codes apply to all building types, really with the exception of single-family homes. Now these codes are there to make sure whatever products are deemed the emergency light in that space meet certain minimum requirements.
Okay.
That minimum requirement could be minimum illumination requirements, at least running for 90 minutes, and then you have testing and maintenance over the life of that fixture as well.
Make sure it keeps working.
Exactly. Now, to be a proper life safety product, it must have a UL 924 certification. So to get this certification, that fixture needs to at least have 1 foot candle on the floor for a minimum of 90 minutes. Now, this test is done in a pretty closed environment, so just because you have a UL 924 certification doesn't mean it's the end-all be-all, it works for all applications, right?
Okay.
So credible manufacturers make IES files available for emergency lights to make sure that they actually work for various applications.
So you can see how much light is coming out of the light fixture in a certain space.
Exactly.
So what are some of the technologies and products that are available today?
Well, there are really around 3 product categories, I would say, that kind of life safety products kind of go into, right? The first is a more centralized or zone system approach. That would be your inverters and generators. And these things are wired directly to a luminaire, and that luminaire is going to perform the same in emergency mode as it would during kind of normal power mode.
Okay.
So they're great for kind of higher mounting heights and warmer ambient temperatures, and because it's centralized, they're all tested simultaneously. The next kind of category would be a more distributed approach. So first product kind of falls in that approach would be, emergency lights. Those would be 2-headed, battery units that are mounted along a path of egress in a building, and basically they're spaced based off their lumen output and distribution of the product.
They're the ones that look like the bug eyes along the top of the wall.
Yeah, we like to say emergency units, but yes, bug eyes, they've been called that before.
I lovingly call them that.
And so the next kind of product that falls into that distributed approach would be, emergency drivers. And those are fixture-based, and their output is based off, which luminaire the product's going into, plus the, wattage of that emergency driver. But the thing to remember with distributed approaches is redundancy. Redundancy in case there's any sort of failure, there's at least some light coming out of those fixtures, to at least provide some sort of illumination there on the floor to get out of the building. The third category is probably what everybody thinks of when they think of life safety, and that's your exit signs, or exit signs and combos. These come in red lettering or green lettering, and they're powered either by an internal battery backup, which would kind of feed into that distributed approach we talked about earlier,
right?
Or they're powered by that generator or inverter when power goes out as well.
So that seems simple enough, and there's lots of options for meeting code. So why would somebody not meet code?
Well, there's a pretty bad trend going on in our industry right now where people are buying off sticker price rather than choosing the product that's proper for that application, actually has a performance to meet code in that application. Now, I know this is not just special to emergency lighting, but
it's in a lot of industries,
right? But the stakes couldn't be higher, right? So just think about it. We spend more time analyzing the distribution and the way a wall wash looks in an architectural space than we do actually analyzing the way a product would perform that could potentially, help save somebody's life.
Right.
So, we do have to be a lot more diligent in actually putting life safety on that same design pedestal.
Help me understand a little bit more what you mean by buying off sticker price versus performance.
Well, code is supposed to require initial testing there actually at the application, there on the floor, to make sure you're meeting those minimum illumination requirements. Well, as you can guess it, oftentimes that's really not being done. On top of that, there's a lack of enforcement to actually call people out for doing the wrong thing, or even educating that what they're doing is not right. And so obviously if they don't know or they're not being called out, then behaviors are pretty much not going to change, right?
Exactly.
So let's take a hotel, for example. So when that building opened up, you'd have the inspector and you'd have the lighting designer agreed on an emergency layout that met code for that space. Now, let's say they chose emergency lights on 60-foot centers or so. Years down the road, they're changing out the light fixtures, they're changing out the emergency lights, and they choose a product strictly off the price, sticker price, or choose it off, the form factor.
They're probably picking one at a time, maybe even.
Exactly, and they don't care about the performance of the product. Well, now that original design of that, kind of agreed upon agreement is not there anymore.
Right, so it's now not meeting code anymore.
You could assume that.
So what do electrical distributors, contractors, building owners need to know first?
Well, ultimately, there's kind of three things they need to think about when, meeting code, right? First of all, they need to understand their local AHJ's interpretation of the code. Now, an AHJ is an authority having jurisdiction. Now, that could be your building inspector, electrical inspector, or fire marshal.
Okay.
And although there's these national minimum codes, that AHJ has ultimate authority in interpreting that code for their local area. Secondly, you need to the use of lighting design software for emergency lights is critical. So we said earlier, credible manufacturers make IES files available so you can actually plug those into the software to ensure they actually work. Right. And finally, you need to understand where that emergency light is going. So if life safety products are needed everywhere. So if it's a warmer ambient temperatures, if it's a wet location, hazardous location, understanding those kind of environmental restraints would actually allow you to choose a proper product.
Okay, so you know the code in your area, you know the application you're putting the fixtures into. Now it's time to select the products. What are the key items to know?
I feel like I've said a lot, so let's just make it very simple. Three simple questions. What is the mounting height of my product? What is the spacing of my product? In other words, how far apart of each one of these emergency lights spaced? And number three is, where's this product going into? What's the environment this product's going into? So at Acuity Brands, we put the spacing recommendations actually on the spec sheet of the product to help you easily choose which product's right for your application. We also provide those IES files so they can be put into a lighting design software to ensure they actually perform the way that we're saying they're going to perform. We do this so that you can properly employ these products and ultimately, create a safer place for the occupants in your building. So, obviously these products can play a pretty critical role in the event of an emergency, so you do want to make sure you're using someone you trust.
Great. Really great information. Makes it super easy to boil down and meet the code for your area and your building. Thank you, John. Appreciate your time today.
Yep.
Join us for our next episode. We will sit down for an executive spotlight on Gray Bar.